About a year ago, in episode 191 of Don't Talk TV, I talked about the accusation of a number of hockey players from Team Canada, allegations of a sexual assault that happened in a hotel in London. Well, there's been some recent and interesting developments in that case now that it's finally moving to trial. So I thought it would be good to have a look at that and to explain to viewers some of what's going on, because there have been some unusual developments with this case. Hello, my name is Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. So as I mentioned in the introduction, in episode 191, which I recommend you have a look at if you're not familiar with the case I'm talking about, I spoke a little bit about this case of a number of Canadian hockey players who were accused of a sexual assault. I mean, essentially a gang rape is what they're accused of. And one of the things I focused on in that episode was talking about why we should not just be following the media in jumping to conclusions that these young men all must be guilty. That we have to have a trial, a fair trial where the evidence is heard. That evidence has an opportunity to be tested by defense lawyers, and there has to be that presumption of innocence. So that case is now in trial, finally, although it's almost gone off the rails a couple of times. And I thought it would be worth looking at that to discuss some of what's been going on with that, because as I said in the intro, some very unusual things have been happening in this case, but I'm not entirely surprised that these unusual things have happened for reasons I'll explain as we go through it. But before we jump into looking at the article and what's been going on in that case, I just want to encourage viewers to please like, share, and subscribe if you find my content good and you'd like to see more of it. This will help us with the algorithm. And we really appreciate the comments. The last week's episode, there were a lot of comments, a lot of interactions, so that's great to see. So please do continue that, and eventually we'll be able to break free of this 8,500 subscriber plateau that we've been on for years now. So with that said, let's have a look at an article from the London Free Press that goes over some of the recent developments in this case. So as I said, this London Free Press article titled "Why the Jury Was Dismissed at the Hockey Canada Sexual Assault Trial." So noting that a second jury has been dismissed, and the case will be now proceeding by a judge alone after a juror complained about conduct of two defense lawyers. So let's have a look at that. So just here's the accused people: Michael McLeod, Alex Fermenton, Dylan Dubé, Cal Foote, and Carter Hart. I think most of them, if not all of them, were drafted into the NHL. They've obviously had their careers. I mean, regardless of what happens, the way the NHL is today, it seems likely that they're not going to get much of a career, but we'll see. But that said, they're on trial now, and of note, a second jury has been dismissed, and now the case is proceeding by judge alone. So there was right at the beginning of the case, the jury was dismissed. It was dismissed early enough in the case that they were able to select a new jury, and they started moving forward with that. But then what happened here? Let's just take a look at this. So it says here, the jury was dismissed on Friday after one juror in a letter to the judge Thursday complained that they and multiple other juries felt judged and made fun of by two defense counsel. The juror alleged that the defense counsel for Alex Fermenton watched and whispered to each other when the jury entered the courtroom each day. The complainant alleged the two laughed with each other as if they were discussing the appearance of the jury. Now, this seems rather to be jumping to a conclusion. The juror obviously has no idea what they're talking about because they can't hear them. It would be absolutely astounding to me for any lawyer to jeopardize their client by making fun of the jury, especially in front of the jury while the jury is entering the courtroom. It seems much, much more likely to me that these lawyers were just talking about something completely unrelated to the case, had a bit of a chuckle, and these jurors just decided that it was about them and got all offended. And I think this goes back to what I was talking about with all the media attention and the predisposition to judge these young men as guilty. And I think this is a problematic part of the whole Believe Women and Me Too movement, this assumption that I talked about in episode 191 about how Canada is just full of rapists, men generally are rapists, men are awful, and that these sorts of things are just going to happen. I think the jury was really tainted by the media, I think, especially with the amount of media attention this was given, such that they're jumping to conclusions and they're just automatically assuming these lawyers must be talking about us. I think this is also a bit of a problem with modern culture where people just tend to be offended really easily and take things personally that really aren't personal. So it's unfortunate this happened, but dismissing the jury was absolutely 100% the correct thing for the judge to do, because there's no way you can have a fair trial when jurors are saying that they think that defense counsel are doing that. They're already going to be clearly biased against at least Mr. Fermenton. And I would also be highly concerned about the ability to judge a case of people that are going to jump to such a conclusion. So I think this is right on. But I want to go back to the article just to touch on one other point. And that's the fact that it's now proceeding by judge alone trial. But this is key here, because I know some people that mentioned this case to me, they thought that the judge unilaterally decided, I'm going to hear this case alone because I've dismissed 2 juries at this point. No, this was consented to by all 5 accused. Well, the lawyers for all 5 accused, but they're obviously acting on behalf of and with instructions from their clients. So if the lawyers are consenting, that means that their clients consented. So what appears to have happened is that these 5 accused, they just decided we're not going to be able to get a fair trial with a jury. And I've talked about in previous episodes about problems with jury selection in Canada these days, now that certain challenges have been eliminated by Justin Trudeau. Just a quick refresher on that. That was after, I forget the name of the case, but that farmer in Saskatchewan who was acquitted on a self-defense argument where there was some Indigenous, at least one Indigenous man trying to steal things from his farm property. He ended up shooting that person and he was acquitted. And then the Prime Minister was so outraged by that he went on national TV saying this is a travesty and he was going to change the law. And the law was changed for jury selection, essentially making it completely random at this point. And now in a case like this, it seems to be operating, with all due respect, I think this is the way Prime Minister Trudeau, as he then was, wanted the law to operate, to make it more difficult for young men like this to have a trial where they're really going to be presumed innocent. But as I've said, I think it has all kinds of problems. And I think in most cases, it would achieve the opposite end of what they wanted. You could actually have more racism in juries because you just have random people now without these abilities to challenge them that lawyers used to have. But anyway, those are just some clarifying points I wanted to make about that case. Again, I recommend you look at episode 191 if you want to learn a little bit more about that case. And as always, this video is not legal advice. If you want legal advice, contact a lawyer. If you want me to be that lawyer, my contact information is listed below, or another lawyer of your choice. But you really need advice that's tailored to the specifics of your situation rather than watching some YouTube video. We always value your comments, questions, etc. And in preparation for that, we're doing the live episode 1 week early. So instead of the first week of June, we're doing it next week. So please, if you have anything you'd like to see me talk about on the live, send it to the email address listed below. And please tune in. And as I said at the beginning of the episode, if you find this video at all interesting, helpful, or informative, you like our content, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, and following us on social media.